What's up, grinders? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to check out this video from Dogen, a very well-known Japanese YouTuber. Well, he's not Japanese, he teaches Japanese, and he speaks Japanese, but he'd be white. Now, we're going to be checking this one out because it's called On the Rise of Anti-Foreigner Sentiment in Japan. Now, I stress the word sentiment there, not because it has any importance, it's because I always pronounce it as sediment. I do not know why, okay? So I'm being very, very self-conscious. Now, I'm going to watch this video because, well, we did that whole series with Oriental Pearl and what was happening in Japan and how Japan's cooked overall, and that was a fun series. Then I took a break, I went back and did my language videos for a bit, and, you know, that's what I do on this channel. I jump between topics as I get bored of them and I move on, and as I feel you guys also get bored every now and then, and we like a little bit of spice in our life. Now, why do I always watch Japan videos? I don't know, because the Japanese language community is cooked. You guys are constantly fighting over the most random of shit, and it's fascinating for someone who doesn't even speak the language, so I have to learn it one day. I will, I promise. It's on my list. Very, very long list. But it's on there, okay? So yeah, I'm gonna be watching this video together. Let's begin.
Should I still move to Japan? I'm worried the country may be losing its identity. A viewer recently asked me this, citing concerns over the economy, immigration, and over-tourism. For those who don't know,
this seems like a discussion that's happening in literally every country around the world right now. Like that email, you could copy and paste that, replace the word Japan with Australia, and you would have the exact same thing. Should I move to Australia? Australia's losing, I feel like Australia's losing, you know, its sense of self. There's tons of Australians who are saying that right now, okay? We're losing our traditional Australian culture because, you know, the constant influx of new immigrants and stuff. And I'm pretty sure you could copy and paste that for literally every country around the world. Now, I'm not negating those feelings from locals. I'm just saying that this is a universal problem right now. Everyone's going through this. I don't know why at this particular point. Like, what's brought this on? Maybe it's just the fact that the economy has just gone to shit literally everywhere. Like, here in Australia, I know a lot of the big anti-immigration protests which have happened over the last year. If you read the newspaper, it's the racist out there. But, like, I know people who've gone to those and they're literally not racist. They speak multiple languages and all sorts of shit. No, they're going there because they're sick of the housing market. That they literally cannot buy. They've been priced out of their own housing market. They will never own anything here. Unless they do an Evildea and become insanely intelligent, frugal, and spend years of their life holding back and enjoying on everything just so they can buy into the market, which is what I did when it was less explosive and now it's insanely explosive. So I feel like a lot of this type of sentiment is coming from the fact that the economy's fucked everywhere.
post-COVID inflation hit Japan particularly hard. Past economic policy made it impossible for the country to raise its interest rates, and this caused the yen to plummet in value, which in turn dramatically increased the price of many essential imports, such as food and oil, and triggered a massive wave of tourism. Everyone who wanted to visit Japan during COVID but couldn't, and everyone that could now afford to because of the exchange rate, all came at the same time, and more people have been coming each year since. As a result, certain businesses, primarily hotels and restaurants in tourist destinations, have started to set their prices based on what international tourists can afford, sometimes pricing out the locals. In the extreme, this can create areas that feel significantly more international. An example of this...
You know what's really interesting? I want to sidetrack and talk a little bit about China, because I think probably it was either before COVID or around COVID, for whatever reason, there was a massive not immigrant, because China doesn't do immigrants, okay? There was just anti-foreigners sentiment in the country, okay? Mainly directed towards Japanese, but also to everyone else. And through many different methods, the Chinese government basically drove out all the foreigners that were there, and there's only a very small group of them now. Entire business is gone, everything, and then obviously you've had, the whole trade wars and everything since then. But at the same time, they kind of, inadvertently implemented all these policies which basically made it harder for foreigners to come to the country, and now they're doing a massive turnaround because, well, their economy's gone to shit. As I said, everywhere it's gone to shit, but theirs has gone to shit, super shit, okay? And now they're trying to get foreigners back, but at the same time, they've got all these contradictory things in place which make it so difficult. An example being is they've recently made it so Australians can go there, I think for a month, without a visa, which in the past it was absolutely insane difficult to get a visa to go to Japan, to China. You would have to go physically to a location, line up for fucking hours because there was so many people trying to get it, bring all this paperwork, bring all this shit to prove you actually plan to come back, all this type of crazy stuff, okay? And now they're like, please come. And yet when I go over there, the last time I went over there, they've still got stupid ass policies in place that basically restrict foreigners like me from staying in most hotels because, well, you know, they're afraid it will give China a bad image. And the Chinese government's like, we will resolve this problem by allowing tourists to stay in any hotel, okay? This is now the law of the land. Except they've also made it so that you still need to report foreigners staying in your hotel, which means you need to upgrade like a bunch of systems, which means a bunch of hotels are still pretending, because it's not worth their financial, you know, it's not worth it financially for them, that this previous rule still exists. So I went to a ton of hotels over there that, even though we'd booked beforehand, and they were like, oh no, he can't stay here, we can't take foreigners. And my wife and I are like, here's the Chinese government, this is their website saying any hotel now. And they're like, yeah, but our local politicians or, you know, police or whatever say you can't stay here. It's got nothing to do with that. They basically just didn't want to pay for all the upgrades that it would cost them system-wise to be able to register my existence within their hotel. But yeah, a little bit of a sidetrack right there.
Is Niseko, a ski resort in Hokkaido known for its powder snow, high prices, and big crowds of international tourists. These issues, combined with the recent uptick in sensationalist Japan is cooked, Japan is over content, has led multiple people,
I'm so curious if he's going to start calling out names,
sometimes in the comment sections of my videos, to express that aforementioned concern about Japan losing its identity. Many Japanese people seem to share that concern. In the recent elections here, the Sanseito, a new Japanese political party with the slogan, Japanese people first, tied for the most seats gained. The Sanseito is typically characterized by media outlets as far-right or ultra-conservative, and the party has been criticized for...
I hate those terms, far left, far right, right, left, because it means different things in different countries. Like, what does that even mean? Obviously, it's probably, well, I can't even say populist. This is a problem, okay? So the word populist itself, it can be applied to both left parties and right parties. So it's not that. It's obviously just nationalist. Making appeals to emotion and changing or backtracking its language depending on the setting. It often acts friendly towards foreigners on more mainstream TV shows, but employs significantly more colorful terminology such as silent invasion when speaking directly to supporters. Many foreigners, particularly those living in Japan, have expressed concern over the Sanseito. Again, sometimes in the comment sections of my videos, asking, Dogen, what are your thoughts on the rise of anti-foreigner sentiment in Japan? It's an interesting situation. One group is worried about Japan losing its identity, becoming too multicultural and too foreign, and the other group is worried about what could be characterized as the opposite, a rise in nationalism and anti-foreigner sentiment. And as someone who has tremendous respect for Japanese culture, someone who teaches the language for a living, but also as a foreigner that lives here and the father of 2 girls growing up here, I can appreciate the concerns of both sides. So in this video, as well as the next, I'd like to try and break things down. Hopefully, adding clarity to and lowering the temperature of the conversations being had. And I'd like to start with the rise of the Sanseito, because I think it's the topic that would most benefit from additional context. I'll be talking... That's so weird, I was just reading that in Chinese.
About the new Prime Minister, Takaichi, as well as some other movements in Japanese politics in the next video. Many media outlets have used headlines, something along the lines of, new far right-wing party wins big, to describe the recent election results here. But do you know how many seats the Sanseito holds in the House of Councillors? Well, they gained 14 seats, taking their total to 15. In a house of 248. That's correct. The Sanseito, which has been...
So it's just hyperbolic bullshit. Okay, they're basically the One Nation of Japan. One Nation's the Australian version of this. It's a small party, but it is growing. It is definitely picking up in popularity, but it's still tiny.
Dominating headlines and talked about by some as if it were the new face of Japanese politics, in fact, only holds 6% of the seats in the House of Councillors. But how could they win the most seats and not hold a majority? Well, again, they didn't win the most seats, they gained the most seats. Japan has many major political parties, between 6 and 12, depending on how you count, and many of them went into this recent election with a big head start. A head start, in many cases, so large that even if they lost seats, they still ended up with far more than the Sanseito. This is the first point I'd really like to drive home. The relative rise of the Sanseito is significant, but it's incorrect to characterize the party as the new face of Japanese politics. The overwhelming majority of Japanese people did not vote for the Sanseito in the recent election, and the party is still a far cry from holding any kind of majority. Which brings me to my next point. Why the Sanseito was able to achieve that relative rise. In my research for this video, I read a BBC article about the Sanseito that correctly points out the party built its platform on a Japanese first agenda that warns against a silent...
Yeah, that's what One Nation's done. Basically, Australia first.
Invasion of foreigners. It accurately notes that the party's growing popularity reflects unease over immigration and over-tourism, and that misbehavior and bad manners by some tourists have added fuel to the fire, creating an impression of a big foreigner problem. On social media, I see posts from people who...
Also, when he's talking about foreigners, I feel like none of these guys mention this, but I'm pretty sure they're talking about Chinese tourists, like most of the time. because that makes up the majority of the tourists, from my understanding.
Appear to have read articles like this, posts that typically sound either like, the Sanseito is using foreigners to fearmonger, hardworking immigrants isn't an invasion, or, good on Japan, it's finally standing up for itself, it's finally fighting off the foreigners and woke propaganda. To me, however, both of these statements really just illustrate how much the conversation would benefit from additional context. I think
it's basically been hijacked by American politics. This is what's happened everywhere.
The Sanseito used foreigners to fearmonger. I think they intentionally grouped different kinds of foreigners together because it's politically expedient. It's easier to make the case for a silent invasion if you don't have to distinguish between Johnny Somali and streamers cycling for charity, or figurine scalpers and retirement home workers. That being said, I also think if the silent invasion quote is brought up, it's important to expand on that topic because failing to do so may lead people to overly pessimistic conclusions. For close to 70 years, a single political party has completely dominated Japanese politics. The party in question is the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party. Now, despite that name, it's actually more of a conservative or nationalistic party. And the longest serving prime minister in both...
Yeah, well, it's kind of similar to Australia. So we've got the Liberal Party, which is actually like centre-right. And then you've got the Labour Party, which is like centre-left. And then this is if we're putting it within the scope of like American politics. I have to do this because it doesn't... Like, American politics does not make too much sense in Australia, but like if you were to assign them, that's how they would be assigned.
The history of the party and the history of Japan is Shinzo Abe, who, during his time in office, was generally liked by the people and seen as a strong patriotic leader. But in 2022, Abe was killed, assassinated by a man who claimed that the former politician had ties to a foreign cult-like religion that had caused deep personal harm to his family. While initial reports dismissed the killer as delusional, subsequent investigations revealed a shocking reality, that many LDP officials, including the former Prime Minister Abe, did in fact have connections to that group.
Wait, what? The LDP's tangled ties to the Unification Church. Japanese lawmakers' conclusive ties with the controversial religious group have emerged as a major national issue. Never even heard of this Unification Church.
The organization in question is the Unification Church, what some people have described as a cult-like religion. And for decades, the church, based out of South Korea, would use front organizations in...
Wait, no, I definitely I have heard about it before. As soon as he mentioned South Korea, it kind of popped into my mind. But like, I don't think I've seen it here. You know, I had one weird-ass cultish experience here, okay? So, let's take a little bit of a step back. Ages back, this is like around the time I started dating my wife type of thing. Her friend invited her to go to some type of event. And then my wife invited me. At the time, it was like my girlfriend, okay? And it was in the center of Sydney here. And I remember I headed there. It was all Chinese. At this time, my Chinese was absolutely atrocious. So I understood nothing, okay? And I followed my wife along. My wife followed this woman. And this woman took us up into there. We didn't realize that, like, my wife's friend was basically a recruiter for this fucking cult, okay? But, like, we went up into this, like, jerry-rigged apartment. And as we came inside, there was, like, I don't know, must be like 60 Chinese people all like in this apartment, just all grouped around. And in the far corner of the apartment, like, you know, like we were in like the living room, okay, and there was a bedroom and everything was open. You could see this TV screen. And apparently there was like some religious leader giving a speech, okay? I couldn't hear it, and even if I could, I wouldn't have understood it. But it was like far, far away type of thing. And I was like, as soon as I sat down in here, I was like, holy shit, I'm in a cult! Like, I knew straight away what was going on. And my wife was so confused, asking her friend, like, what's going on? And the girl was like, oh, it's okay, just watch. And after a while, my wife was like, and I was like, oh, okay, let's make a strategic exit. But like, I was the only white guy there. So as soon as I stood up, all the heads turned and looked at me and I was like, toilet. And I just fucking legged it out of there. My wife just followed and we just did not go back. I don't even think my wife speaks with that person anymore. I don't even know how she met that person. How the fuck did we get engaged and all that? But yeah, that was kind of crazy. I've got more cult experiences. I've actually managed to somehow wander into cults multiple times, but we'll talk about those in future videos.
Japan to gradually introduce Japanese college students to its doctrine. A doctrine that teaches Korea is the Adam nation, and Japan is the Eve nation, and Japanese people...
Does that mean Japan and Korea gotta fuck? Sorry, I'm not gonna... You're so bad. Come on, man, there's kids that watch you. They shouldn't be watching me.
Can atone for their country's past sins by purchasing expensive urns, donating to the church's overseas headquarters, and converting others to the cause. The church...
Of course. Expensive urns, that's always where it's at.
Also encouraged Japanese women to move to South Korea and marry Korean men handpicked by the church at mass-arranged wedding ceremony.
Wait, I've seen these. This is them? Holy shit. Well, sorry, I almost like, wow, okay. Shit, they're big.
Over time, the organization's activities in Japan picked up substantial momentum. Professor Roy Stars from the University of Georgetown notes, Japanese followers have reportedly funneled 70 to 80% of the church's total income to South Korea.
Okay, when I started this video, I was expecting a video about immigration, not like this freaking church, but I am all for this. This is fascinating. The Unification Church teaches that Japan owns an eternal debt for its colonial rule, and the Japanese followers have reportedly funneled... You Koreans, you're smart. You're smart. You figured out how to get payback. Japan has effectively become the church's primary financial base, largely due to its skillful exploitation of historical guilt. Oh, you Koreans, man. Don't mess with the Koreans, eh? Jesus, they will figure out.
Japan has effectively become the church's financial base, largely due to its skillful exploitation of historical guilt. Some adherents become so obsessed with donating that they drive their families into financial ruin. Despite this, the ruling LDP did little to rein in the church's activities. In fact, many senior party members had connections with the church and received various forms of support from its network. Professor Stars expands, Abe and the LDP largely ignored the issue, benefiting from the church's unwavering political support. Many LDP lawmakers admitted that church members served as reliable voters, fundraisers, and campaign workers. The mother of Abe's killer had...
Are any of you guys in my audience part of the Unifying Church? Out of curiosity? Because I would love to hear from you guys.
sent $700,000 and donated her home to the church, bankrupting the family to a point where they often couldn't afford to buy food. Though the assassin originally planned on targeting the church's president, he couldn't approach her, so he switched to Abe, who...
Wait, what? He couldn't approach the president of a church, but he could get to the president of the country? What's the logic in that?
He believed to be one of the most influential Unification Church sympathizers in the world. Once the assassin's motives were made clear and investigators tried to see if there was any substance to these Unification Church LDP Association claims, information started pouring out. Many Japanese people for the first time learned about the Unification Church and its decades-long history of arguably exploitative practices in Japan, as well as the LDP's ties to that organization. When the LDP tried to distance itself from the church via an internal investigation, it accidentally ended up revealing that approximately half of its lawmakers had associated with the group. Which brings me back to the recent election. While I'm sure the BBC has covered the Unification Church scandal in detail in different articles, it isn't mentioned in the piece about the Sanseito, which I believe may cause some readers to assume that Japanese voters who resonated with that silent invasion rhetoric did so only because they're suspicious of skiers in Hokkaido and hardworking immigrants. It may cause foreigners who are unaware of the depth of the Unification Church scandal to think that Japanese voters are unfounded in their suspicion of foreign influence.
Oh, so this is not about tourists. This is about a church. Holy shit, okay, that's completely new to me.
In reality, until very recently, many members of Japan's most powerful political party had ties to what critics have described as a foreign cult-like religion, connections that some argue came at the expense of ordinary citizens. And just as the nation was starting to recover from the shock of that scandal, multiple members of that same political party, the LDP, were found to have failed to report over 600 million yen in political fundraising income. Did some Japanese people vote for the Sanseito because they see tourists and immigrants as a silent invasion? Yes. But I believe most, perhaps the overwhelming majority of Sanseito supporters voted the way they did, not because they have an issue with people like you and me, but because they were deeply frustrated with the LDP, what many people see as the corrupt political old guard. I think
that's similar in Australia with One Nation. Most people are voting for, well, not at the moment, but most people are putting their support behind One Nation just because they're unhappy with the two major parties.
The fact that the Sanseito gained roughly the same number of seats that the LDP lost is further evidence of this. But there are other political parties in Japan. Why did the new party using foreigners to fearmonger get all those votes? Is that not strong evidence of a big rise in anti-foreigner sentiment?
Okay, let me guess. Is it because they're the only one that's being covered in the news and therefore it's the only party anyone knows about?
In Japan. It is, in a vacuum. But the Sanseito was doing other things to stand out from the crowd. I think the primary reason the Sanseito in particular did so well is because they're social media native. While some of the Sanseito's stated goals, such as changing the constitution, are quite extreme, many of their other goals, such as lower sales taxes and higher international tourist taxes, are neither extreme nor unique to their party. But the Sanseito started out on YouTube, so they know how to play the game. They know how to make a standout thumbnail and a catchy title, and how to properly light and mic a young, well-dressed subject who, like this, speaks directly to the viewer. And most importantly, they regularly post...
I need to start a political party. We're gonna call it No. Who should be president? Should it be Elmo or me? I'm thinking I'd get more votes if it's Elmo. What do I stand for? Whatever gets me money. No.
Free content. The other parties do the exact opposite. They never post free, meaningful content to their YouTube channels, but then right before the election, flood the platform with unskippable ads of 70-year-old men making vague statements like, one step forward. It's the digital equivalent of not doing anything for a year, and then right before the election, sending out a fleet of obnoxious election vans that just say the politician's name on repeat. It makes people think, I'm not going to vote for you just because you're doing this. It's a social media strategy. It's a strategy at large that, if anything, alienates potential voters, even if the party in question also wants lower sales taxes and higher international tourist taxes. I think the Sanseito in particular did so well because they were the only party to capitalize via social media on the LDP exodus, which was triggered by two massive scandals and heightened by their perceived failure to address newer issues, primarily the rising cost of living. Over-tourism is becoming a larger issue, and the Sanseito took advantage of this too by fear-mongering at the expense of all foreigners. I can't condone that. But I also can't condone jumping on social media to return the favor, to accuse every single one of their supporters of unfounded xenophobia, especially when evidence points to most simply being disillusioned LDP voters. It's ironic, there's a lot of Japan is cooked content going around these days, some of it from Japanese politicians and some of their supporters, much of it actually from foreigners that neither live here nor speak the language. And everyone's entitled to use the internet how they choose, but nobody...
Well, they can't be speaking about Oriental Pearl with that statement because she lives there and speaks the language.
Nobody's talking about the elephant in the room. Nobody's talking about the fact that for every 10-second reel of a foreigner walking by a broken window in Kamata or some graffiti in Nakameguro...
Okay. Yeah, we know what he's talking about now.
There are 15 videos uploaded to Japanese YouTube showing the opposite. イタリア人が本格的なラーメンを食べてみた. Italian man tries authentic Japanese ramen. 韓国人が初めて新幹線に乗る. Koreans are amazed by their first ride on the bullet train. 円安なのになぜ日本で働く外国人? Why foreigners are choosing...
I just love listening to how his voice changes as he speaks this. Is he purposely putting on like some type of different... Like... His voice sounds completely different in Japanese. But it also sounds like it's a much higher than it is in English.
...to work in Japan despite the weak yen. The fastest growing genre on Japanese YouTube is foreigners reacting to and celebrating Japan. That meme that we have in the West? Thing, Japan. The opposite exists here. Japanese karate teacher? Nobody bats an eyelash. Foreign karate teacher in Japan? Sir, may we make you a documentary? And the comment section...
This happened in China to a degree. Like, there was so many Western stars within Chinese social media, okay? And they were just saying, like, the most basic of goddamn sentences, and fucking, it was just blowing up. But the ones that really blew up, the little Westerns over there that really blew up, are the ones who were like, oh my god, look how good China does this. America does it. Shit! And they'd say that, like, in the most basic of Chinese, and then they just blew the hell up. It would be so easy to sell out there.
For these videos are always filled with conservative sentiment. It's always, this makes me proud to be Japanese. Thank you for loving Japan. This reminds me of why I love this country so much. The members of the two groups social media has framed as utterly incompatible are often best friends in real life. Foreigners in Japan, the people that left their homes, flew halfway around the world, and learned an entirely new language because of their passion for Japanese culture. And Japanese conservatives, the citizens here most passionate about maintaining and celebrating that culture. We're both just super otaku. ソーシャルメディアがなければ、僕たちは今、クソうまいビールを飲みながら笑いを交わし、好きなワンピースキャラクターについて熱く盛り上がってるだろう。なのに実際にやってるのは、X での意味のない道徳的非難。唐揚げがもったいない。So let not the distorted lens of social media, but the experiences we have here shape our views on the country and its people. If each one of us does this, we may yet be able to lower the temperature and avoid the hyper-polarization sweeping across much of the rest of the world right now. I implore all of us to touch some shibahu, because that simple act is what stands between this country becoming the hellscape sensationalists portray and the amazing nation it actually is.
That was a fucking excellent video. Like, goddamn excellent. Like, it gave me... It started in one place, went to a completely different other place, and went into depth on this issue rather than just like, you know, a surface level look at things. And it was also kind of inspiring. I really liked it. Basically, fuck you, social media, for trying to tear us apart. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Of course, go sub to his channel. Not that he needs it from me, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you've all enjoyed the video. I'll see you all in the next video. And if you're not there, that's because you are out on the street canvassing for Elmo's new political party, which is Make Esperanto Great Again. That would actually technically make sense if you looked at the history of Esperanto. I could... Don't do it, Evildea. But I could. There was a time when Esperanto was great.